Marathon poem. I once read a quote about marathons. At a marathon, even as you get in line at the start, you're already a winner. As you have done what most have failed to do, you showed up. Over the years, I ran 5 marathons. Although I didn't finish the 1989 race, it was a valuable learning experience. As the saying goes, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I got sober in 1981. After getting sober, I started gaining weight, mostly from eating sweets. To get healthier, I began running at the Marshfield High School track wearing desert boots. At first, since I wasn't sure I'd stick with it, I didn't want to waste money on sneakers. Running's always felt natural to me. My mother used to say my first steps as a baby were running. After college, I would stop at the YMCA in Boston with a friend from work. We'd lift weights and run 5 miles on a small indoor track. When I got married and moved to Marshfield, I drifted away from running for a while. Eventually, I returned to the Marshfield track on weekends and noticed a group of runners gathering on Saturday mornings. By then, I had proper running shoes, so I joined them a couple of times a week. At first, I was at the back of the pack, but over time, I moved to the middle. I learned that several members were training for the Boston Marathon, which inspired me to try it myself. In 1988, at age 41, I decided to run my first marathon. The group I was running with was called the Marshfield Road Runners, and they offered a bus from Marshfield High School to the marathon start for a small fee. I joined them. Running and marathoning became a major part of my sober life. I have the disease of alcoholism, which affects me spiritually, mentally, and physically. Running helps with the physical challenge, and marathoning gave me a pleasurable endorphin rush. A few days after finishing, I forgot the pain and only remembered the pleasure. Completing marathons also boosted my confidence, as people, especially my NDA sponsors, would ask about my experience. I hoped to run a marathon every year until I turned 80, but the distance and the weather eventually took a toll on my body. After my 5th marathon, I had to stop running. In my 70s, due to the arthritis in my knee, which was bone on bone. On the morning of April 18, 1988, I joined the Marshfield Road Runners on the chartered bus, leaving Marshfield at 6 a.m. and arriving at the starting line in Hopkinton. The air was cold and anticipation ran high as we waited for the race to begin. There was a light, steady rain, and a number of runners were wearing trash bags. As we approached the starting line, everybody was discarding their trash bags. As I headed to the starting line, one of these discarded trash bags got wrapped around my feet, and I almost fell. The rain soaked my shirt and shoes. My shirt was custom designed with BC 63 on the front, since I graduated from Boston College in 1963. As I ran by BC, I got a big applause. A student even offered me a can of beer, which I declined. The back of my shirt read "Easy Desert to Boston," in reference to an AA slogan. The marathon itself had its ups and downs. Around 15 miles as I passed Newton Wellesley Hospital, I considered stopping at the emergency room. I kept going. Near BU, I started to cramp up and finally fell almost in front of a Green Line train. A marathon volunteer gave me some warm coat, which helped me recover, and I finished the race. I completed the marathon in about 4 hours. It would be my best time for all my 5 marathons. My Mylar blanket given at the finish line was a memorable keepsake from my first marathon. I ran without an official number, so I did not receive a medal from the Boston Athletic Association. For my first marathon, I got sponsors to support Muscular Dystrophy Association, MDA. Since my nephew Michael Foley had the disease, I raised over $1,000 for MDA by running the marathon. MDA also gave me a medal for raising funds for muscular dystrophy. I really appreciated it. 1989 Boston Marathon. After completing the Boston 88 Marathon in 4 hours, I was determined to qualify for the 1990 race. On the morning of April 17, 1989, I joined the Marshfield Road Runners on a chartered bus to the starting line at Hopkinton. The air was chilly and the anticipation ran high as we waited for the race to begin. I started with great expectations and ended with the agony of defeat. We eventually arrived at the starting line and it was chilly. We got started around 12 p.m. and it took us a while to get to the starting line and it was still cold. So I started out fast, but I had to stop to relieve myself about 2 miles. As time went on, the sun became stronger and I started to overheat. I started to feel hot when we got through Framingham and Wellesley Centers and the shade disappeared. When I got to the fire station on Commonwealth Ave, I knew my family would be coming up next at 19 miles. At about 19 miles, an elderly man collapsed in front of me and required medical attention. I decided to stop and leave with my family. My MDA sponsors would pay up even though I did not finish, and I raised over $2,000 for MDA. I was depressed and decided to make a training run from Boston Park Plaza to BC and back to emulate the distance I did not complete in Boston, 89. I also registered for a fall marathon in Newport, Rhode Island. The day before the marathon, Sunday, April 16, the high temperature for the day was 43 degrees. The day of the marathon, Monday, April 17, 1989, temperature rose from 40 to nearly 70, and we hit sunny skies as we got closer to Boston. The optimal condition for runners who are trying to avoid overheating is overcast skies and temperature in the 50s. During the 1989 Boston Marathon, I kept passing Johnny Kelly the Elder. I was having a lot of trouble running and kept stalking. He would pass me and I would pass him back. He ended up finishing the marathon and I did not finish. In the 1989 Boston Marathon, Johnny Kelly, at age 83, finished his 60th race in 5 hours, 42 minutes, and 54 seconds. He called it the happiest day of his life, culminating in a shared embrace with his wife, Lorraine. At the Boston 1989 Boston Marathon, the runner who was the fan favorite was Johnny A. Kelly, also known as Johnny the Elder. He completed the race as part of his legendary 58 finishes. The Boston 1989 Marathon was another in a long line of his appearances, as he competed in the event an astonishing 61 times, with his last race being in 19 1992 at age 84. He was an American legend, famous for his victories in 1935 and 1945, the record for most starts and finishes in the Boston Marathon. The 1989 Boston Marathon was the 93rd running of the annual marathon race in Boston, which was held on April 17th. The elite men's race was won by Ethiopian's Abibi Kamonen in a time of 2 hours, 9 minutes and 6 seconds. In second place finisher Jama Ikakanga from Tanzania at a time of 2 hours, 9 minutes and 56 seconds. 1989 Rhode Island Marathon. After dropping out of the 1989 Boston Marathon at mile 19, I was determined to finish another marathon. When my friends from the Marshfield Road Runners mentioned the Rhode Island Marathon, I decided to join them and registered for the race. It was scheduled for October 22nd, 1989. I arrived in Newport and checked in to the new Marriott. After the race, I was planning to do some sightseeing the next day. The night before the race, nerves got the best of me. So I attended an AA meeting at Edge Hill. Seeing familiar faces from my old Park Street group calmed me down, since they were the commitment. Feeling calmer, I returned to my hotel to get some sleep and prepare for race day. The Edge Hill Recovery Center in Newport closed in 1993 when it was purchased by the Independence Square Foundation. The center, originally built as the Edge Hill Alcoholic Rehabilitation Center, operated until this purchase led to its closure. The center opened its establishment in 1975 until its sale in 1993. The race was a circular one, starting and finishing in the same place, turning around in Middleton at Second Beach. The race started with an uphill jaunt on Memorial Boulevard before heading downhill towards Newport Harbor. It was cool when we started at 10 a.m., so I wore 2 shirts. I researched the Rhode Island Marathon on the internet. When I ran it, it was sponsored by Delta Dental. Today, it is sponsored by Amica. From 1988 to 1992, a different group organized this race, and it was known as the Rhode Island Marathon, now known as the Amica Newport Marathon. The Amica Newport Marathon, also known as the Newport Rhode Island Marathon, has a rich history of events and participation. The marathon has been held annually on the second Sunday of October since its inception in 2015. It appears to be essentially the same course as the one I ran. I was running with a group from the Marshfield Road Runners at mile 11 near Salve Regina. A fellow Marshfield runner pointed out my shirt was soaking wet with sweat. It was 12 p.m. and it was starting to get hot. After getting some teasing from the group, I decided to take one of the shirts off and I tied it around my waist. I thought I was running a good pace under 8-minute miles, and I figured I might qualify for the Boston Marathon. When I got to Middletown in Second Beach, we turned around and headed back to Newport. I realized why I was running such a good pace. We had been running with a stiff tailwind at our backs, which was now turning into a stiff headwind. It was like hitting a brick wall. I decided to take a break and relieve myself in the bushes. When When I started up again, it was at a much slower pace. Now I was worried that I might not finish the marathon. As the day wore on, it started to get colder, and they sent us back out along the Ocean Road. The final 2 miles take runners back up Tuckerman Avenue through Eastern Point neighborhood before a celebratory turn into the Eastern Beach finish area. There was a good breeze blowing in from the ocean, making it even colder. I tried putting the shirt back on. It was around my waist, but it was not much help since it was still damp, and I started to get the chills. As we approached the finish line, I saw that we were going to go up a small hill to get to the finish line. But after 26 miles, this hill looked like Heartbreak Hill of Boston Marathon fame. I made it up the hill and stepped on the finish line and heard the cheers of the crowd, not quite as loud as Boston. Immediately, both my legs started to cramp up, and I fell. They helped me into the medical tent, where they filled me up with liquids in the form of Gatorade. I felt it was a good choice versus intravenous fluids, and eventually they let me go. I forgot my Mylar blanket I got at the finish line, and I left it in the medical tent. 1989 Rhode Island Marathon. This is the official certificate of the completion of the Rhode Island Marathon. I finished 504 overall, finishing in 4 hours and 12 minutes. Not bad time, but not good enough to qualify for Boston in my age group. Although I did not qualify for Boston, the experience taught me resilience and gave me memories I will always cherish. They started to renovate the waterfront in Newport, and I was staying at a new Marriott hotel that was built down by the water. The Marriott was in the heart of the charm of Newport's historic waterfront, where cobblestone streets lead to quaint shops and sailboats dotted the picturesque harbor. I was having problems walking, particularly getting up on curbstones, so I decided I would cool it and drive back home. I did not do any sightseeing around Newport and did not see anything other than the mansion I ran by. Boston Marathon 1990. On the morning of April 18, 1990, I joined the Marshfield Road Runners on a charter bus leaving Marshfield at 6 a.m., arriving at the starting line in Hopkinton. The air was chilly and anticipation ran high as we waited for the race to begin. One of my traditions during the marathon was to change my socks and shirt at mile 19. My sister Jenny helped with my socks, while Kathy assisted with my shirt, and my mother looked on, always supportive. The weather that year was much better, cooler than 1989, and thankfully not raining like in 1988. Hail, hail, the gang's all here, going left to right, my son John, my mother, my Uncle Dan, and my sister Jenny. Uncle Dan, my mother's brother, was there to help me with my shirt, showing how family always rallied around me during these events. Part of my fan club, including Jim O'Hare, my friend and sponsor, my sister Kathy O'Neill, and my cousin Billy Doherty, whose house was right on the marathon route in Newton. After the race, we would gather at Bill's house to celebrate and sharing stories and laughter. My mother, the leader of my fan club, gave me a loving kiss and told me how proud my late father would have been. My sister Kathy looks on, cheering in the moment. These memories filled with family friendship and community support are what truly made the 1990 Boston Marathon unforgettable. This is the Mylar thermal blanket given at the finish line. I was running the marathon with the Marshfield Road Runners. I was running without a number, so I did not get a medal at the finish line. I was met at the finish line by my son John, and he told me he had parked at the Christian Science Church, which is about a mile away from the finish line. We had to walk from the finish line to the Christian Science Church. I was complaining that I had run this marathon slower than my Rhode Island marathon, and John said I was just getting older. A few weeks after the marathon, we gathered at my house in Marshfield. In one photo, you can see me with Michael Foley, my nephew, and his mother, Judy Weston, all proudly displaying our MDA shirts. I was proud to have raised over $3,000 in sponsorship for MDA that year. Labor Day weekends were often spent at their house helping to collect donations for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. MDA was always generous to them, and Mike's courage was inspiring. He eventually passed away from muscular dystrophy in his 20s. 1997 Boston Marathon. I ran with the L Street Running Club. I started out with some of the L Street runners, but they all finished ahead of me. Two of which were my training partners, Kelly Condon and Pat Brennan. We were running a marathon for a member of L Street Running Club who had cancer. His name was Jim Kane, and he had run several marathons. We were given a ribbon to give to a designated person at Heartbreak Hill. The plan was to bring the ribbon in to him in the hospital. This is before I changed my shirt. This was one of the custom shirts I wore in 1988 and 1990. I am officially registered for the marathon, and my number is 11,457. My number is clearly visible, and I have an L Street cap on. The sun was relentless during the day, and as the heat began to rise, exhaustion crept in. Sweat stung my eyes, and my legs felt heavy. But I refused to slow down. Desperate for relief, I grabbed a cup of water and poured it over my head, feeling the icy shock against my burning skin. A moment of comfort in the midst of struggle. Heartbreak Hill loomed ahead, infamous for breaking the spirits of so many runners. My heart pounded with anxiety and determination. I whispered to myself, "You come this far, don't give up now." With every step, I fought through the pain, ready to face the hill that would test not just my body, but my spirit. This is around 19 miles after I changed my shirt. Heartbreak Hill is getting close. This is a different BC shirt. I could not find the second BC shirt which I wore in 1988 and 1990. This is a marker at Heartbreak Hill dedicated to John Kelly, a running legend and longtime Boston Marathon runner. He was now 90 years old. He was 84 when he ran his last marathon in 1992, posting a time of 5 hours and 58 minutes. I look pretty good in this picture, but it looks like I'm getting close to Boylston Street. All the way down Boylston Street, I kept getting leg cramps, and I would have to stop a number of times before getting to the finish line. I thought someone was moving the finish line back on me. I stepped on the finish line with my L Street hat in hand. As I crossed the finish line, I looked at my watch to get my finishing time, but I did not remember the finish time. I eventually got a certificate of completion from the BAA giving me the official time. This is the Mylar blanket you receive at the finish line with a picture of the certificate of completion and a picture of me stepping on the finish line. I also received a medal for completion which is MIA for the time being. This is the certificate for finishing the 1997 Boston Marathon from the BAA. When you are a registered runner, you also get a medal at the finish line. My net finish time was 4 hours and 37 minutes. It took me 7 minutes to get to the starting line. I finished 8,404 overall, and for males I was 6,185, and for my age group I was 835. My age was 47 years old. I raised over $2,000 for the Ron Burton Training Village. After I finished the marathon, I walked back to the L Street bus and attempted to get on it. I started to go into cramps in both my legs, and I was blocking the aisle so no one could get on or off the bus. Once I got my legs under control, I decided to walk back to the starting line, where I bought a commemorative shirt. I then returned to the bus and was able to get on without cramps. Jim Kane, who we had run the marathon for, died that night of complications due to cancer. The L Street Running Club had a party for those that ran the marathon. I went to it, and I started to get nauseous after eating. I bowed out early from the party, but before I did, I had someone take a picture of me with my commemorative shirt and my number. A couple of weeks after the marathon, and when I had just started going out with Karen Dennis, who became my second wife, we went to the finish line on Boylston Street and bought a commemorative jacket of the 1997 Boston Marathon.